Hello everyone, welcome back to Mathematics MJ, where numbers make sense. So today we're focusing on linear equations. A linear equation is an equation in which the highest power of the variable you are solving for is one. A linear equation can never have more than one solution. So basically, we're focusing on equation where the highest exponent there is one, and we expect one solution. We expect one solution for linear equations, right? So let me just give you an example of a linear equation. Um, Let's say for an example, they decide to say solve for x if, okay, if, and then they give you number one, where there's x plus 2 equals to 5. Okay, this is grade 10. Um, Normally, we just transpose this. You move it from one side to the other one, and then it changes the sign automatically, right? But I want to explain step by step how do we get to that. So you have your x plus 2. What is an opposite of plus 2? That's minus 2, right? What you do on the left-hand side, you must do on the right-hand side. So you subtract 2 both sides, right? So by doing that, we are eventually canceling plus 2 and minus 2. And on the left-hand side, you're left with x. But on the right-hand side, you're left with 5 minus 2, which is 3. So basically, your x is equals to 3. So there's two ways to solve this, right? One would say, okay, I prefer to use this way, whereby now I transpose to the right hand side. So when you transpose, you are moving 2 from left hand side to the right hand side. Ne? That's transposing. When you do that, the sign of 2, it changes from positive to negative, right? And then you have your 2 there equals to 3. So your final answer now is 3. I know that as learners, we are not of the same level, rather. So some learners would say, I prefer method number one, while others would say, I prefer method number two. It's up to you. So if you catch first, then you can use method number two. But if you're still struggling, then you can use this method, right? I hope it makes sense. Now let's move to example number two. So for example number two, we are still solving for x, but then now we are given 5. That's x plus 1 minus 3 plus 2 minus 4. What's nice about math is the fact that whatever that we've covered um, on our previous videos, now it comes back. It comes back. The distribution law, collecting of like terms, all of that, they come back now into one sum. So you have to apply all of that in one sum. So what do I mean by that? When I see brackets, I think of distribution. That's what comes to my mind, right? So 5 times x, that's 5. And then you have your x plus 5 times 1, that's 5, equals to, now 3 times 3, that's 9. And then there's x there. And then 3 times 2, that's plus, and then your 6. And then you drop down your negative 4. I hope it makes sense. Now let's try and simplify our left-hand side. So basically you have your 5x plus 5 equals to 9x. 6 minus 4, that's plus 2. Right? And then from there, the only thing that you can do at this stage, you can subtract 5x and 2, both sides. That's the first thing. Or you can transpose 5x to the right-hand side while transposing 2 to the left-hand side. Why am I doing that? To group the like terms, all the numbers with variables one side, and then numbers without variables one side as well. So let's do that, right? So, okay, let me start with 2. I've decided to transpose 2, so you're left with your 5, and then there's minus 2. Now I have to transpose 5 to the right-hand side. So I'll end up having my 9. I'll end up having my 9, and then minus, when you transpose, the sign changes automatically. So now you have your 5 minus 2, which is 3. 9 minus 5, that's 4x, right? So now we are not solving for 4x. We are solving for x, right? So we have to isolate x. And this thing can be written as 4x equals to 3. It's the same thing as saying 3 is equals to 4x. The only thing we'll have to do here is to divide by 4, both sides. And then these two will cancel. Now your x is equals to 3 over 4. And then that's your final answer. I hope it makes sense. Let's move to example number 3. We are still solving for x there. So for example number 3, you have your 4x plus 5 equals to 2, 8x minus 3 minus 2. Still solving for x. There's brackets there. At this stage, we understand how to take care of brackets. Ne? 4 times x, that's 4x. So I'll just write 4x in that sense. And then plus 4 times 5, that's 20, equals to 2 times 8, that's 16. Then there's your x, there you drop down your x. And then 2 times negative 3, that's minus 6. And then you drop down minus 2. And then from there, let's try and take care of these two, right? So minus 6 minus 2, that's minus 8. When using your calculator, you don't have to even stress yourself there. And then now you have your 4x plus 20 equals to 16x minus 8. Let's do the same thing. So transpose 4x to the right-hand side, and then 8 to the left-hand side. Ne? Why am I transposing in that sense? Because I'm trying to transpose the smaller term towards the bigger term, and then smaller number towards the bigger number as well. So now you'll have your 20 plus 8 equals to 16x minus 4x. Ne? This gives us our 28 equals to 16 minus 4, that's 12x. This can be written as 12x equals to 28. Okay. Divide both sides by 12 because we have to isolate x. We are not solving for 12x, but we are simply solving for x. So you have to isolate x. And by doing that, we get 7 over 3. I hope it makes sense. I hope it makes sense, my family. And then now we move to example 4. Let's move to example 4. Example 4, it involves fractions now. It involves fractions. Let's move to example 4. So you have your example 4. we're still solving for x and we are given 8 over x plus 4 equals to 5 over x plus 3 over x. So the first thing that you have to do here, you look for the LCD. We call it lowest common denominator. That's x over 1. And then the next step, you multiply everything on your equation by x. Let's start with the first term, you 8 over x. Multiply it with x over 1 plus 4. Multiply it with x over 1 equals to 5 over x. Multiply it with x over 1 and then plus 3 over x. You multiply it with x over 1. By doing that, you can see this is a numerator and a denominator. Multiply, they're cross multiplying, which means they cancel. Now you're left with 8 over 1. 8 over 1 is just 8. Same applies, okay, with these two. 4 times x, that's 4x. And then 1 times 1 is just 1, right? Now equals to, these two, they cancel again. Now we're left with 5 divided by 1 is 5, right? Plus x and x cancels again. Now we're left with your 3. Now, basically, we are having 8 plus 4x equals to 8 when we add 3 and 5. Now, you transpose 8, you'll end up with your 4x equals to 8. Now, the sign from positive, it changes from positive to negative, right? I hope it makes sense. And then now we're at the stage now where we have 4x equals to 0, and you just need to divide by 4 both sides, and then we conclude and say x is equals to 0, right? And then okay, we're done with example 4. Let's move to example 5. Let's move to example 5. So for example 5, still solving for x. Here you are given 24 over x plus 4 equals to 8 over x plus 2, right? Here you can use your LCD, or you can use cross multiplication. You can only cross multiply if you have something like this. That's the term on your left hand side and another term on your right hand side. Both are fractions. Then you can cross multiply in that sense. But if it happens that you have your A over B plus C equals to D over E, you cannot cross multiply because of this term here. You can only cross multiply if you have one fraction versus one fraction. I hope it makes sense. I hope it does make sense, because that part there is really, really important, right? So now, how do you multiply? How do you cross multiply? So when you cross multiply, A and D will be multiplied together, and then B and C will be multiplied together. That's what we have to do even here. So 24 will be multiplied with x plus 2. And then 8 will be multiplied with x plus 4, right? I will use two ways to solve the sum. And then from here, you have your distribution law because of the brackets. At this stage, I know that you're mastering this part. So you have your 24x there plus 48 equals to your 8x plus 32. Again, let's transpose. obviously we have to take the smaller term, moving it to the bigger term. So this is minus 8x equals to, but for this part, we are forced to take the bigger term, move it to the smaller term. So we have a 32 minus 48, right? And this gives us 16x, which is equals to minus 16. And then divide both sides there by 16, and then x is equals to negative 1. We're done, eh? I hope you understood the part of x is equals to 1, and you still remember the what, the solution that you have your x equals to 1. So now I want to use a different method now to calculate this. So a different method, we use LCD. We just use LCD. But trust me, the idea behind is the same, because it will take us to the same answer. What is the LCD here? You have your x plus 2 and your x plus 4 over 1. Now, take the first part of the fraction, multiply it with the LCD. So you have your multiplied by x plus 2 and x plus 4 divided by 1. Now, equals to the second part, multiply it with the LCD as well. So that's multiplied by x plus 2 and then x plus 4. So from here, x plus 4 and x plus 4, they cancel because that's the numerator and the denominator. Same applies as x plus 4 divided by x plus 4. And then we also do the same thing even here. So now, can you see we are left with 24 and x plus 2 equals to 8 and x plus 4. And then at this stage, that's when now you multiply, you distribute them, you get your 24x plus 48. Again, here you get your 8x plus 32, right? And then you transpose. Now this is your 24x minus 8x equals to 32 minus 48. And then this gives us 16x again equals to negative 16. Divide by 16 both sides to isolate x. Now x is equals to negative 1. So now we're done with the, what's this? We're done with the linear equation. Now we move to the quadratic equations. We're done with the linear equation. I hope it makes sense. So let's move to the quadratic equations. So a quadratic equation is an equation in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0, right? Now there are steps to solving the quadratic equations. Those steps are as follows. Step number 1, right hand side or your left hand side must be equals to 0. That's the first step. Number 2, factorize. Can you see now the factorization is coming back? The factorization is coming back. So always look for a common factor first. But I will show you what do I mean by that. And then number 3, you solve for x. So I want us to follow these steps, no? Together. You can write these steps down and then we'll start with our examples. So before we continue, x values are called solutions or roots of an equation. So x values, they are solutions, or you can call them roots of an equation. I hope it makes sense. So I want us to start with our first example. So for our first example, okay, example 1, let me write it. Example 1, solve for x. If, and then we're given x squared equals to 6x. So you have your x squared equals to 6x. I know some of the learners, they will want to divide both sides by x, but please follow the steps. Step number 1, left-hand side or the right-hand side should be equals to 0. So what do I mean by that? I have to transpose 6x to the left-hand side. Now it changes to negative 6x. And then by doing that, now I have to factorize. Always look for the common factor first when factorizing. So the common factor here is x. Now you're left with x minus 6 equals to 0. Now let's use the rule a times b equals to 0. Therefore, a is equals to 0 or b is equals to 0. Meaning your x is your a and then x minus 6 is your b. And then this is equals to 0. Right? Now let's apply that. So you have your x equals to 0 or x minus 6 equals to 0. Now x is equals to 6 when you transpose this to the right-hand side. And then you've solved for your equation. Now we have two solutions because this is a quadratic equation, unlike a linear equation where we expect one solution. So example 2. We are still factorizing, we are still solving for x, but now we are given 8x squared equals to 8, right? So that's not a problem. Let's start with the first step. Let's start with the first step there to let our left-hand side or the right-hand side equals to 0. So you transpose. And then after transposing, take out your common factor. That's the first step. Now you have your x squared minus 1 equals to 0. So by doing that, I can just divide both sides by 8 so that I can get rid of that 8 in front of the bracket. Now I have x squared minus 0. But now when we go back to factorization, do you still remember that we've covered difference of two squares? So this is what? Difference of two squares. It's the square root of the first term and then the square root of the last term. That's x and x, and then 1 and 1. Difference, negative means plus or minus, different signs. Therefore, we can say x is equals to negative 1 or x is equals to 1. But I know some of the learners, they will say, how did you get to x equals to negative 1? So this is what I did. X plus 1 equals to 0, and then you transpose 1. Now x is equals to negative 1. Same applies to x minus 1 equals to 0. Transpose again. Now x is equals to 1. That's what I did. I hope it makes sense, right? You can never divide both sides by a variable because now you are dropping this, one of the solutions. Now you're losing the solutions. I hope it makes sense, right? Now let's move to the next example. Let's move to the next example. Example number 3. So here we are given x squared plus, oh sorry, x squared plus x equals to 20. First step, which will help you, transpose to make sure that right hand side is equals to 0. By doing that, now we have a direction because this is a trinomial. How do you solve a trinomial? You factorize by opening two brackets. Let's do that. You have your x and your x. We're looking for the factors of 20. When you subtract them, they give us positive 1, right? So you have your 5 and your 4, plus and minus, right? And then x is equals to -5. I hope now we understand how did I get to x equals to 5 and then x is equals to 4. Because I've just explained during our previous sum, right? Now, example 4. Solving for x, but then now we are given 2x squared plus 5x plus 3 equals to 0. Again, we have to factorize this, né? So we first look for the factors of 2. That's 2 and 1. And then you look for the factors of 3. That's 3 and 1. Don't forget to create a middle term. So after getting the factors, cross multiply. 2 times 1 is 2. 1 times 3 is 3. Add these, we get 5. So this should be a plus and a plus. So meaning this is our first bracket and second bracket. Introduce x there, x and x. So I've already factorized that thing. Now I'm just having two brackets equals to 0. It's just copy and paste. 2x plus 3 and then x plus 1. Because now this seems to be complicated, I will do it step by step. So this is equals to 0 or x plus 1 equals to 0. Now transpose. This is -3 divided by 2. X is equals to -3 over 2. This side, x is equals to -1. And then you got your answers. We're done with example 4. Then we move to example 5. Example 5, you are given 3x squared plus 3x minus 18 equals to 0. Here, obviously, already you have 0 on our right hand side and then everything on our left hand side. Next thing, you take out the common factor. So you have your x squared plus x minus 6 equals to 0. So when you divide both sides by 3, it will cancel, right? 3 and 3 will cancel. Now you'll have to with your x squared plus x minus 6 equals to 0 over 3 is 0. And then from here, factorize. So you have your x and your x. That's 3 and 2 plus and minus. Now x is equals to -3 or x is equals to 2. Then we're done. That was example 5. Example 6. Solve for x. Now you have a 2x plus 5. And then 8x minus 3 equals to 0. We take the first part there, first bracket, 2x plus 5 equals to 0. And then the second bracket, 8x minus 3 equals to 0. Transpose 5. Divide both sides by 2. Your final answer is negative 5 over 2. The next one, we have your 8x equals to transpose this one. Now you have your 3, divide by 8, divide by 8. Now x is equals to 3 over 8. And then these are solutions. And then last example on our video. Example 7. And then we close our video. So you have to solve for x, and we are given x plus 4 equals to 32. The first thing you do there, you transpose. Now this is x plus 4 minus 32 equals to 0. Now distribute. This is x squared plus 4x. The reason I'm doing that, I'm trying to get rid of the bracket so that I can have a standard trinomial or a standard quadratic equation. From there, factorize. So you have your x there and your x. And then this is 8 and 4 plus and minus. Now x is equals to negative 8. Or x is equals to 4. Then these are your final solutions. I hope you've enjoyed our today's lesson. I hope you've enjoyed our today's lesson. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. Please make sure, guys, that you do those things. We've come to the end of our video. I will come back again with the continuation of the rest of the topics on our ATP, because I'm moving according to the ATP and I'm busy with term 1 now. There'll be a stage where I'll be explaining question papers now. When you start with your cycle test, I will be explaining the question papers, how to answer questions from our exams. Bye.